Janice, welcome to the Space Plus podcast.
Thank you for having me, Angelica.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here today. You're in Kenya, as we've been speaking a few seconds ago, and I'm excited for that because it's quite interesting because I'm Kenyan and I'm not in Kenya, and you're not Kenyan and you're in Kenya, so it's very interesting the dynamic going on right now.
Yes, it is. It is quite an interesting world.
Yeah. So, what is the definition of quality education?
Access, the ability to have access and equal opportunity to everyone. I think quality education is often talked about in a sense of privilege. I think we'll talk this more about in the podcast as we talk about it. But I've gotten some, because I do social media commentary and very technical things, and I've had people say that the reason as to why I say those things is because I'm privileged, and my education, particularly as a person who's had a privileged education, I don't have the right to speak for people who have not had such access before. I guess from that lens, I kind of understand why the access as grounding for quality education.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. The whole rhetoric on privilege. And yeah, I watched your YouTube channel and how you're talking about how you talked about the whole USA thing and someone came, people came at you and they were talking about how you're speaking from a point of privilege. And I feel like I also get that a lot because sometimes I feel like I don't have the right to dictate stuff to people because I also come from a place of privilege. But how have you been able to maneuver through that and still advocate for your work and advocate for, say, right now you're doing a project in Kakuma and be able to draw the line between the privilege that you have but still help people.
I think quite frankly, I don't want to call it privilege because it deems the fact that I have worked hard for half the things I have. And secondly, I would rather call it grace, because there are some places I've been, people I've met that I don't physically qualify for in metrics of the world. I prefer to call it grace. So if you hear me switching to grace, yeah, that's it. But I think how I've been able to navigate that is that, first of all, I actually genuinely care. I know I might come up as very staunch or indifferent when I say certain things, but that comes from majorly a place of frustration. And that's the feedback I've been able to receive from various people that have watched my content and my feed and my videos and tell them, hey, you make some really great points, but sometimes it's about how you say the things you say. And I think how I've been able to navigate that, and people calling my privilege and nullifying my ideas and works because they come from a place of privilege. I know this is going to sound very, very triggering, but I would like to ask those people, we both have the same privileged education that you are, for some reason, vilifying me for. So what are you doing with that privileged education of yours to help the societies I'm trying to help? Because I also realize that people are very quick to jump at someone's efforts to see change in their community without giving a counter alternative to the current issues at hand. And so, having realized that, I stopped. I'm very open to feedback when I get it, but at the same time, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing just because someone doesn't like it. Because if they don't like it, then they should start doing something to counter what they don't like about my ideas and also impact communities. Because if we keep pulling down people who are actually actively trying to help society, then who is going to say the hard things, do the hard things, if all the people who say and do the hard things are dragged down, essentially? So that's how I take it up. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's actually 1000%. I totally agree with that. And I feel like when someone takes the effort to, go the extra mile and do something that is amazing for society, they usually face the pushback that you're facing. So I'm wondering how you've been able to go and go beyond that. One thing that I really adore about Americans is that Americans, they have this different culture from every other person in the world, because I feel like over here, if you want to pioneer in something, everyone's just yeah, go for it, do it. But I feel like in every other part of the world, it's more of antagonistic, and everyone's trying to tell you, oh, that's too bold, that's too ambitious of you. So I love how the approach that Americans go about in doing stuff, they don't see the impossible. But yeah, now that you've taken the extra mile and taken that step to do what you're doing, how are you able to turn down that like noise and that backlash like from people who like don't see the necessity of what you're doing?
Well, I don't think there's a physical mechanism I use. Okay, first step first is that I know this is should be normal, but switching I think the only notification on my phone is my Gmail because that's where the important people are. But like every other social media, no, none of my notifications at all. I essentially try to do a phone detox every single day for just my mental health. And no phone in the first hour of the day, no phone in the last hour of the day, because I know I'm gonna read some very terrible things between that time. And so that has been very, very helpful for me to know when to stop essentially staring at screens, especially as someone who engages with thousands on a daily basis. But also the other thing is that I think I'm glad that I have a very strong internal structure that is my parents, my friends, and people who just genuinely care about me, that we can have these complicated conversations and at the same time give me feedback that maybe someone else was trying to relay, but in a more rude way. They are able to mystify it and make me understand why they reacted that particular way. That has it has given me a balance. So I don't really resent people much for saying mean things about me because to some extent I do understand them. I guess it's always language, the language that they use that really, because it's one thing to say, hey, you shouldn't have said that. And it's another to call me a bitch, privileged punk. They use so many heavy words. Yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, I can hand it to you, girl. You're doing the most, and like, we need more people like you because I feel like for you to like, like good things actually take time and good things are like hard to get there. So like what you're doing, honestly, is impacting a lot of people. So yeah, like keep on doing what you're doing. But now back to your definition of quality education. You talked about access, and I'm wondering like what that access looks like. Like how does it manifest in our educational institutions?
Well, I'm going to speak to Uganda particularly. I chose. I'm speaking from a place of grace again. Going through my whole, I've been privileged, okay, to go through some of the best schools in Uganda. And so I went primary school, I went to a very good primary school. High school, I went to King's College Budo. It's like that's like the best in the country. Anyway, and everyone could argue differently, but I went to the Royal Hill. You will not tell me otherwise. That's where I went for my O level, and then for my A level, I was again, someone call me privileged, but I call it grace. I got a full ride scholarship to the African Leadership Academy, which is the school leadership institution in South Africa. A 2-year A level diploma. I get my A levels because I did Cambridge A levels, but at the same time I get like a diploma in African studies, rhetoric and writing, and entrepreneurial leadership. I think that grounding particularly gave me a more comprehensive understanding what access in education means and then what quality in education means. And so I'm going to like break those things down. So when it comes to access, in my work in volunteering, I volunteer a lot to be a debate coach, just even for projects that have nothing to do with me, but just to support my friends. I have gone to places where my education experience was completely different from other kids' education experience. And some things that I find absurd in schools are the normal for them. We were doing one project last year called Keep High in Schools. It was essentially supporting girls through menstrual hygiene to enable them keep going in school, right? But then we reach at this institution, and the classrooms, the wind blew off. I think they had a hailstorm. The wind blew off the roof. And so we asked them, why hasn't this been fixed? They're like, oh, the area MP hasn't gotten to us. I'm like, how long has this been? It's been 2 years. Wait, 2 years? There's so what they did is that they had to move all kids in one classroom. It's very stuffed, very hot, to the extent that some boys dropped out and they were like, they don't see the value in it. We went for the girls, but we were having conversations with the boys as well. And so some of the things I really found very absurd, like, I just need a roof under my head to study. Why is this a problem? So Uganda, first of all, lacks access. And I think that's very, very important because there's no incentive for someone to go to school. That's the very first thing. When we're talking about quality, because I've had the grace to have both access and quality education. But I think we need to start, I'm not one of those, what do they call them? people keep saying that I'm out of touch, but it's very rather interesting because people keep saying that. But I'm one of the most in touch with reality people because I actively work in societies that are highly affected with these particular issues. So I see them, I experience, I have these conversations with these people. Just this morning, I was having conversations with these ladies who are in refugee camps, and the stories they tell you are constantly heartbreaking. But that's nonetheless of the point. When we are talking about access, particularly, is that I won't blame our government because there's so much going on, and there's governments are very complex, full of bureaucratic issues. But then there's no priority given to quality access. They try to roll out projects like what do they call it? UPE, USE, it's primary living, so free education. They gave access, but quality is very, very poor to the extent that it's very difficult for someone who went to a universal primary education, for universal secondary education, to compete against me who went through private school their whole life, right? And then that becomes a very huge inequality because then when you go to these seminars to talk to these people and engage with them, I know how competitive application cycles to things like scholarships and opportunities abroad or just employment can be. And then you have to you have these people asking you, hey, how did you get these opportunities? And I know how complex the thing is when it comes to education, qualifications, but it becomes very, very difficult to explain to this person that according to your education and your qualifications, I don't think you will go through with this. And then I'm constantly forced to lie through my teeth and tell them, hey, all you have to do is to study so hard in school. Study so hard in school, and I promise you, things will work out. But in reality, that's not how the world works, because it's often not enough to study hard and be an A-star student. It's always complemented by how great your co-curriculars are, or sometimes how connected you are to some institutions. And all these nuanced complexities make access and quality two different things. So my first issue is access. Give people the incentives to go to school. Provide decent classrooms, decent meals at school, decent teachers. Provide the materials they need, right? If we can progress to access, then we'll worry about the issue of quality. Anyway, with access comes good quality at the same time, because if you actually do care about access, then you will care about quality at the same time. So they work hand in hand. You just have to think about how you're going to look at it.
So Janice, you talked about people normalizing absurd things. For example, the roof situation, and like it's not a normal thing. And I feel like since I came to the US, like for my freshman year, I feel like there's some things that we've normalized also, like in Kenya, in our Kenyan education system, that is not present over here. There's some things that people get away with in Kenya, like in Kenya in general. Like there's no sense of accountability that is present within our system that is present over here. So I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, and I was saying like how, as much as America has its problems, I feel like there is a better sense of accountability over here, where you can like follow up on something and get to the bottom of it, as compared to like where in Kenya, like there's no sense of accountability, where like if you try to follow up in something, you may not like get to the bottom of it because like the system does not work essentially. So now I'm wondering, first of all, how can you make it so that we don't normalize this kind of culture where we're not accountable to our actions? For example, like say worker compensation, not even in the education system, but in the political system, in the system in general, where we just have accountability for people's actions. Like someone cannot get away with like doing wrong. People get rewarded for doing like great things, Yeah. And we don't normalize like people getting the bare minimum, because I feel like we've really normalized getting the bare minimum to the extent that someone thinks that they don't deserve getting good things. First of all, I don't know if that experience is the same in your education in Uganda and then in LA and then in general.
Well, that's right. It's a very complex question. I don't, because I know deep down everyone feels they're deserving of more, but it also varies here, because there's a question of what more exactly, and that's where the aspect of exposure comes in. Because when you constantly expose yourself to new things, nice things, better things, you then realize, oh, what I actually had is not
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
And then that explains a lot for people who haven't had the privilege as I have had to maybe travel the world or go to nice universities and nice schools and like have all these experiences. And when you come back and try to translate that, they call you whitewashed, or you are you don't understand how our system works, and they will constantly want to settle. It's like the US aid issue. I genuinely talked about how it is not sustainable for African nations to depend on aid, and that there's no way we're going to grow if we depend on aid. And people were telling me, do you know how many people are losing their jobs? And I remember I'm like, do you know how many people would be losing their jobs if we weren't on aid? And they kept giving me these very ironic reasons as to why. Of course, I don't know why I even thought I'm dumb or because I know millions of lives are at stake. And the fact that millions of lives are at stake, it should give us a wake up call that, hey, the system is not sustainable at all. And that we are more comfortable being okay with bare minimum, being okay with being given aid and being our whole lives being dwindled upon the mercy of others, and we don't even have the capacity to sustain our whole healthcare system. Uganda's budget, only 14% goes to the healthcare system of over 46 million people. And that's very, very detrimental, especially for people who depend on free government aid, which is over 80% of the population. And so the conversation around people, I don't know, normalizing the bare minimum, one, it has a lot to do with exposure. Not very many people as educated, not very many people are exposed. And so sometimes they are normal, they are comfortable with it because they thrive in it, because they have not been exposed to better. That's one key factor. I think that it's playing a strong role. So I think that's where people who have been exposed, who have the capacity and authority, for example, people in government, people who work for civil society educations, who have had the capacity to explore the world more, that's when they come, they're like, okay, this system actually has to change because things could be better. But each time someone like that comes in, of course, people who are used to the normal try to pull them down. And in most cases, it's people from high up in the ranks, because then they don't want to lose money into these projects. They don't want to lose all these privileges they could probably lose if they actually start investing the money where it's supposed to go. And I think those are the key issues, because then they'll either try to pay you off or shut you up. And it's not a healthy space, especially they keep telling you, you'll grow up. When you understand the system and you grow up, you will understand. A lot of people keep telling me that. And I don't know how to feel about that, because it normally comes from a place of threats. I've been threatened a bunch of times for my life. But at the same time, it also comes from a place of people make jokes. Oh, you wait when they give her money and she has like a big office, she'll stop yapping about it. I don't know how to assume I don't have money. That's also a very nice thing. But like, I don't understand what type of money they are talking about. That would be too much for me to sell my soul, because I don't know. God has given me the grace that I've been sustained, that I don't greed for things that are not mine. And I pray that He keeps me that way. But ultimately, people have cracked jokes because it's very interesting how social media works, because then someone writes something down in a whole bunch of like 12,000 comments, but they fail to understand that I'm the creator, so I will see it when it pops up. People have said so many things about my character. People said she's speaking from privilege because her parents work in government. My parents don't work in government. People have said she just needs a couple of millions. I don't know why they assume I don't have those couple of millions already. So let's just say it's been an interesting experience to watch other people judge my personality and character from a single clip or a 4-minute video, not knowing how complex human beings are. But the whole conversation around it's largely depends on exposure, on how someone is exposed to something, to then fully understand that what I'm actually currently having could be better if I decide to step out of that comfort zone.
All right. And I'm wondering, like, because you've traveled out around the world, what has been the, pivotal moment where you're like, huh, you know, yeah, people really need to see this. Like, what has been like those moments, those highlights where like you've traveled, because you've traveled to a lot of places, a lot of like UN locations. So like, where exactly have you like been, and you'd be like, yeah, I think we need to like have a field trip for the, the bunch of people that do not like see what you see.
The Middle East.
Hmm.
The Middle East. I know the whole world has glamorized the United States as the land of the free and
Right now it's different. That's debatable right now. Trevor Noah was talking about how like in the past, like in the 2000s, someone would be like, "Where do you want to go?" They'll be like, "I want to go to America." But
America.
right now it's been dimmed down. America is not all that great, but stuff work over here. Yeah.
The
But yeah,
land of opportunity. Well, it could be all those things, but I think because the world, as the world in general, we have been the Middle East has been painted very very badly to the rest of the world by most media, by public media. But like I had a trip to Georgetown, Qatar, and that was the most mind blowing experience of my entire life because I was going to. I am currently at university. I'm an undergrad at Bocconi University. I'm doing international law in Milan, Italy. But like when I went to this institution, there were kids my age driving Ferraris to school. And in my mind, I was like, I am working hard. I don't necessarily want a Ferrari, but I'm working hard so I can get a job to help me afford that car. Someone is driving it to school. And it was that's just a very random example, but like the whole concept that a car that is more expensive than every single body organ that I own combined stops for me to cross the road. And the air smells different. The sky looks different. It could be it's a very hot country. It's like, it's like the pits of hell. But like the technological advancement that if you are a Qatari citizen, you don't pay for education your whole life. And it's top tier quality education. So your parents never, ever, ever have to touch in their pockets to educate you at top tier institutions. Same with healthcare. So like every single other thing, you know how African parents spend half their lives just trying to pay for our fees and take us to good institutions, and they maybe money they would have invested in businesses that could grow them financially. They decide to invest it in their children so that they could have a better life, right? So the dynamic is shifted in Qatar, whereby money someone gets, they just keep investing to make more money, right? Whilst in Africa, the money we get, we just keep spending without necessarily getting back. And so you find very, 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 very rich people whose goal in life is not to get richer, not to do anything, because buy a Porsche, they could just do that. You just walk to the Porsche store tomorrow and like do it. It was very mind opening because these people think like wealth, look like wealth, smell. It was a very. I think people who have gone to Dubai as well have had this experience. But like when you enter a country like that, your whole mind shifts because then I've been to the US, then I've been to Europe, and the way we romanticize Europe and the US, and when I had the experience to go to Qatar, I was like, these countries are nowhere close to this one, particularly in wealth, in and I think
quality of
having had
life.
yes, and having had that experience particularly, it changed my whole perspective. It's not because we are sold a lot of things in media, we are told what to believe. And having had that particular experience, that first of all, a government can provide for its citizens very high quality things. A government can grow its cities to look utopian. It looks very utopian, to the fact that a government, because I know they'll argue that, oh, the governments in the Middle East are monarchies. They are monarchies, but at the same time, they are governments and they're being able to provide for their people to live lavishly. Then why can't ours do it? And I know they'll give you all sorts of ugly reasons, non-accountable, very absurd reasons. Or we were colonized. Or come on, Singapore, Uganda got independence before Singapore, and Singapore is like, what, 50, 100 years ahead of Uganda in every single aspect. It's not that we were colonized, it's not that we failed to adapt. And failed to pick our priorities, and now we are suffering the consequences of our forefathers. Yeah.
Yeah, 1000%. Like sometimes, someone could like bring up the factor of, oh, Britain was not colonized and stuff like that. I mean, like, we got Singapore over there. We don't got no excuse. Yeah, 1000%. I feel like Dubai, that's honestly like an amazing place to like just stay in. The quality of life, the healthcare over there is amazing. I was in Dubai for like a short while, and the bathrooms are cleaner than the ones here in New York, and that's my verdict. That's just the representation. If you go to a place and get clean bathrooms, chances are the quality of life is better off. Yeah. But going back to what you talked about on the incentive of like getting a good education and someone to go to school, yeah, I'm wondering because now going back here in the US, because that's where I'm at right now. I had this opportunity to like staff for Model UN for high school students who came like to Columbia for the Model UN, and I realized that a lot of American students are incentivized to like go the extra mile because they're told for them to get into college they not only need like their GPA, but they need to like do community service, for example, do like extracurricular activities, for example. In contrast to in Kenya, for example, where like the only incentive you have is to like get that A, because like if you get the A, you will go to like med school, for example, so someone is not incentivized to like participate in extracurricular activities or like do a sport, because I mean at the end of the day it won't help them get into like med school, because like everyone wants to go to med school, I guess. So yeah, so in your view, what do you think will make it so that like students are incentivized to participate in community service, to participate in extracurricular activities, and realize that it's not all about the grades, but it's all about creating that multifaceted individual?
Well, how to incentivize would definitely go. I think the most effective way to do it is to actually actively incorporate it into the education system, the way the US does it. Because other than that, for an example of my parents, I was very active as I used to do a lot of debate and public speaking, and my parents hated it. They're like, you're wasting a lot of time. You are instead of going to school. One time I called my dad on a weekend, telling him I'm on a debate tournament. It's like, why are you wasting time on a debate tournament? Go back to school. You have exams next week. So I think it does come from a generation that has been told all their lives that if you want to go somewhere in life, you have to excel in school. But at the same time, it's really controversial, because then you see that the richest people, members of parliament, the minimum requirement you require to become a member of parliament is an A-level certificate. And you don't have to have you just have to have passed. So you can imagine that people making major policy decisions in the country. I'm not trying to be what's the word, elitist in any way, right? But then you come into a space where people who need to have a particular, I don't know, it's not even about intellectual capacity, but a particular credibility to make decisions for the country, having the least exposure, the least education foundation. But it's just because politics, they don't care how educated you are, they just care that you can rally people. And most highly educated people just can't do any of those things. So it becomes a very big problem. But then at the same time, we have to understand that we have to find a balance within education, particularly. That's why I say that I think the best way to incentivize people is to give them a quality education. I, for one, did not. I think the whole extracurricular thing. I was just interested in these things because they make me happy. They gave me, of course, the medals were pretty cool, but like it was a space where I connected with people I liked. But at the same time, I I just wanted to branch out. And that's why I decided to do an education away from Uganda for my A levels, because I felt suffocated in this environment. I felt like my potential wasn't fully utilized. And that was one of the reasons why I was incentivized to branch out, particularly. Yeah, but putting it in education is like the go-to, in my opinion.
Yeah, 1000%. You talked about elitism, and I had the opportunity to talk to like the dean of science here in Colombia, and he was explaining how like sometimes the students like do an experiment in like the labs, and once they're done with the experiment, they come and like if it doesn't become successful or like they miss something, they come to him and they be like, oh, I missed something, and he, because of his experience, he'll be able to like identify, oh, maybe you didn't stain the experiment well, or like you didn't push the slides well in the microscope or something like that. And I realized the importance of like having experience in like someone's field. And I feel like that is what is missing in most of our like political institutions, where we elect like, say, someone who's a minister of education who does not have the experience in empowering people in education. So like someone goes there and they'd be like, oh, I showed up, so what are we supposed to do? And they don't have the passion. I feel like we should just put people who have shown the passion for the thing, say in education, for example, like put someone who has passion in education, who has shown like tangible actions toward education, instead of putting like, I guess there was this meme on like someone after getting into government and they put the whole gang in the government. So I feel like that's what's going on. Like they just put their whole gang of friends and they don't like put they don't factor in the substance of like someone has to have experience in this field and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's quite interesting, honestly. So how do you think like we can, make it better? Like in your position as you stand right now, you've had a lot of like accolades. You are the best orator in a moot court. Your first moot, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so first of all, how was that experience like? Like going to compete. This is your first moot court competition and you're the best orator. And what was the vibes like over there? What did you learn?
Well, I think moot court, like I said, like I think I've mentioned, I've done debate before. Those skills are transferable, I think, in my opinion. It's just that I guess in moot court, it's less of, it's I don't know, lawyers, it's more, I don't know how to explain it, because the skills are the same, it's just that now you have to be more, in debates, you have to logically engage the other person in a way that you flip whatever they're arguing, and you could, honestly, I can't even differentiate the difference between a moot court and the debaters. Okay, procedurally, they could look differently, but how to execute it, almost the same. Okay, that will vary depending on different students who have done both moot courts and debates. But of course, I was pretty nervous. I'm always nervous when I'm doing things that I care about. I don't know. It shows that I want to do it and do it well. But at the same time, I was pretty excited. It was my first moot court. I didn't have a suit because I was planning to school. I was packing for school. A suit was not in the mind, and I was like, oh, but like it was a very interesting experience. I'm so excited to do more. I don't want to be a lawyer. I've made that decision, but like I think having a legal background is very, very important, at least for a person who's very interested into public policy, particularly. And it gives you so much of how that field actually works. Yeah.
What about your experience in African Leadership Academy? How has that been? And what lessons did you learn about how quality education should be? Because I'm pretty sure, based off of what I know about African Leadership Academy, like that's top tier education. So like,
yeah,
what lessons did you learn from African Leadership Academy? What was your experience like? And what do you think that they're doing right that we should incorporate in other institutions?
Mm-hmm. What they're doing right is that they're actively encouraging kids to branch out. I think that's a very interesting thing, because I came to LA with, I'm joining debate club. That's what I'm doing because that's what I know how to do. Well, I ended up doing, because when you're doing your course, there's this entrepreneurial leadership class you have to take, and then you have to join a student enterprise. And I wanted to join the ALA Model African Unions as my student enterprise, because I was like, that's my space. But then I ended up not getting in, and then I was put in another social enterprise called House. So House is a student enterprise that deals with community building.
So is
And
a
like
student enterprise like a club?
it's not a club, it's part of the curriculum. So particularly the entrepreneurial leadership course, it's like about how to run fully functional businesses in the real world. So how you run a business, so they even literally give you one to run it. You have to give accountability or funds. It's actually crazy. It's like a lot of course work. You have to fully run this enterprise, but at the same time you have to be able to engage with your academic work. But it was very interesting because for me, as a person who tends to be antisocial, and I know it's kind of odd when I say that, but I tend to be very antisocial when I'm in groups of people. It was a very good opportunity for me because then I had to actively create activities for other people and then incentivize them to join them. So like I was constantly placed, I had to constantly work in a team. It was the most frustrating thing in my entire life. But also the most rewarding thing, because then I realized how important team dynamics are, how if you have a disagreement within the team, nothing can work. And I guess that's what ALA is doing right. I guess they're a bit to push kids to branch out. I can't say the system is perfect because every system has flaws. Because with the ALA curriculum, you also have your A levels. So like managing that time is insane. And you do have to graduate with both your A levels and your ALA diploma. You cannot fail either or. I think with the timing and how the courses are, I think they're still trying to figure that out. But in exposing kids, because they give funding opportunities. For example, if you land a cool project and you want to work on it, there's space for that. They actively help students to follow their dreams. Something African parents are very much against. And I think what most ALA kids have been facing with their parents is that when they go to ALA, they come back a completely different person from when they came, when left their country. And then parents and kids have always had this strife because now parents no longer identify their kids anymore because now they are more bold. They want to try and dare and not talk back, but challenge perspective. That's what we used to always call it. And that really bothers a lot of people. And I guess ALA did that quite well. I think that's what I really, really, really liked about that. They to be unapologetically yourself, in a way. Yes.
So, if I may ask you, what does it mean for you to be unapologetically yourself?
Okay. That's really interesting because I actually censor myself a lot. Now that I think about it. I censor myself a lot because I have a dream. I have goals and aspirations of where, honestly, can't say I know where I want to be, but at least I have an iffy if of where I want to be and the place I want to be. You have to portray. I'm not saying I'm trying to conform to standards of the world. You have to be a certain individual. Because if, for example, I'm a person who does policy, works politics, could want to be the UN Secretary General one day. I unfortunately cannot create.
Yeah, you're gonna be the Secretary General. I believe in that.
Well, but anyway, dreams can change. But like, point is, as a person who wants to do that in my life, I cannot create twerking videos on my TikTok. That's gonna come back and haunt me later in life, and the internet never forgets, right? So I'd rather so I tend to censor myself on the internet quite a lot. So I can't say I'm unapologetically myself on the internet because my opinions are genuinely my own. But then when you go to other ways, I'm a very petty person. So when someone writes a very mean comment, sometimes I respond with the most meanest comment ever. But I can't do that because my future depends on it. But I do censor myself quite a lot on social media. And I am unapologetically myself around people. When I meet people, when I have conversations with people, I want to engage with them because I love having conversations with people who are like-minded. And so I think that's when I'm unapologetically myself. Of course, with my family and friends, that's definitely me being me. But I guess it's very tricky. My opinions are my own, and when I decide to give an opinion and say it on the internet, I have thought it through, and I couldn't care less what the backlash is. but I just had to say it. I think my commentary is me being unapologetically myself, at least in its purest form. Yeah.
And you talked about how like you don't like working in groups, and I'm wondering if that stems from if you're introverted or again like if you're like focused on what you want and like people are like too slow for you. Are you naturally introverted or are you an extroverted person?
I am I am introverted, but I didn't like working in groups. I think ALA is what taught me how to work in groups. But like before that, I detested it because the whole essence of having to work with other people who may not be as interested in what you're doing as you are was very, very frustrating because I want you to play your part, I play my part, and we move on. But at the same time, it's very, very important for me to learn how to work in groups. As a person who likes community-centered work, it was imperative that I'm able to assimilate within everyone else. I think that experience particularly has helped me grow as a person because then if I want to impact the people, I should be able to be one of them at any given moment or time. And so I am introverted. I struggle to make relationships. So I struggle to make friends, in fact, because people think I come off as mean and bossy, and but like it's just that I'm just too scared to walk up to them and say hi. Nice to meet you. It's not that I don't want to. It's just that I physically cringe at myself when I do it, and I would rather not put myself in that position most times.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Honestly, I feel like Janice, you're a representation of the overachiever who, you know, like sometimes making friends is hard because of the commitment that comes with it. That's something that a lot of people over here struggle with here in Colombia, where like, okay, we want to like chase our dreams. And then now we also have to like balance between chasing our dreams and that social aspect, you know, of like, okay, now I have to like make friends. Oh, but I have this like cure for cancer I have to work on, you know. So I feel like there's always that balance of like trying to chase your dreams and trying to have that social aspect, you know. And I don't know, because people talk about how like a lot of African communities are very communal and like a lot of like Western societies are very individualistic. So do you think that's the case for yourself? Because clearly I'm also like I'm not very good at making friends as well. Like I feel like if I make a friend, like I'll make like a very like deep connection with them. It's either you make a deep connection with someone or like, okay, it doesn't work out, you know? And I'm from like Africa, I'm from Kenya, you know, and like I didn't have that communal aspect that people usually talk about. And I don't know, like what's your take on that? Do you feel like we're still that communal aspect of African societies where they think that we're communal, or we're shifting away from that, or is there a mix of the two?
Well, I think it depends where you go. I think I'll juxtapose with ALA. So ALA is very community centered in the aspect that they force us to be with each other all the time, to work in groups all the time. Because of course it's the African Leadership Academy, they are pushing African agendas, African customs, African beliefs. So of course the community aspect should be central to the whole program. I think having experienced that, having to constantly be in a team at every single aspect, at lunchtime, in class projects, and then I having grown up in a very isolated environment, because I grew up very isolated. I very rarely went to play with friends. I don't know. I've grown up as a very lonely child. I'm not an only child, but a very loner child. And I guess that experience, particularly for me, has been interesting. I don't know if it's definitely. I think for the communities, I know they are trying to tilt away from community, the sense of community, because the world is changing, and a lot of ideologies are shifting to. But at the same time, I've seen people try to hold on to the aspect of community as well, because they don't want to lose their identity in the process. So it is a very blurry space, particularly. I don't think I could give a very linear answer to that.
Though, like, how do you feel you can draw the balance between the social aspect? Because definitely, I feel like human beings are social beings, and we need to like have community, but we still need to work, you know, and chase the bag, I guess, and like chase our dreams. So, like, how are we supposed to like draw that like balance? Is there a balance? Because people talk about how like work life balance is a myth, and you either get one or like you get year one. You can't get both. So how do you draw the balance, in your opinion?
I guess in everything that you do, create a community in that particular sense. If you want to create a community at work, if you want to create a community in your passion and your dream, there will always be people who like the same things you like. And so you can make those people your community. I don't think that you could ever actually try to distance yourself from community. I don't think it actually is possible. I think from my experience, there's always a community you can create, either people of the same likes, same race, same kind. I think you just have to find those people and then click with them. And then I think that the balance works out, in my opinion.
Okay, so now let's segue to your social change at grassroots level. And first of all, the question I have here is, why do you like volunteering? Why do you like doing social change? What does that mean to you?
I think it comes from a place of, yes, I have all these complex ideas of how the world can change in systems, but I'll not remain oblivious to the fact that there are people at the ground. And it's going to take time for systems to change. So as the systems change, let's try to do the work at the ground level as well. Because in most cases, grassroots initiatives support communities way more than bigger systems ever do. I think that's what I've seen in my work and people around me. I like volunteering particularly because then you get to experience people just being people. And especially volunteering in a place where no one knows you, no one knows who you are, no one even cares who you are, right? Because I've volunteered in places where people knew who I am from social media, so that was very difficult connecting with them genuinely because they constantly made it about me, right? Yet when I go to places where no one couldn't, they don't know, like they don't like it, they just see a face. I connect so well with them because then they are coming with me with this very fast impression, and I'm being a person with them, and connecting those genuine relationships is very, very, very important to me. I think that's what I love about volunteering, because then you get to see the world through someone else's eyes, have conversations. I'm in Kenya, so I don't speak Swahili, right? And it's been very interesting an experience because then I always have to tell them, oh, I don't speak Swahili. And then they laugh at me, like, what do you mean you don't speak Swahili? Go on and on about it. Let's just say it's been very heartfelt and very re-energizing to be in a community that is baffled when you don't speak Swahili in their place, because of course you're in Kenya, you should be speaking Swahili. But then at the same time, it's very, very energizing to be in a place where no one knows you, so you can actively make new relationships with them. In contrast to when people know you and then they for some reason they have this image of who you are, and then they can't move past that. And it just becomes way difficult to have any other conversation apart from me. And then that just becomes very counterintuitive, I guess.
Yeah, 1000%. I feel like when I moved here, like my first semester last year, it was really nice because like I was starting on a clean slate, so like no one knew me, like no one cares about no one understands the grade I got in like Kenya, like we're all in Colombia and I guess we're all smart and like we're starting on a clean slate where everyone's smart and everyone's like doing great things. And I love that because like coming from high school or like primary school where like everyone knows you, everyone's like swooning over. It's not everyone, of course, but like people like know the impact that you're doing, and they're like, "Oh my god, you're so awesome!" To coming here, like, okay, everyone's doing something. So no one like I mean, people care, but they've done that as well, and you get into this community where like, okay, we're all overachievers and we're all doing great things. So it's not like a huge factor to be like an overachiever. That was really great and really humbling at the same time. And it's interesting because one of the people I invited to my podcast, she was talking about how like sometimes you should get out of that comfort zone. Now tying it to what you talked about, exposure and this point, and like get out of where you are seen as the default, because it makes you have this new perspective that you couldn't have seen if you were like the default, in say back in Uganda, for example. So like I'm wondering, now that you're in Kenya, first of all, like, have you gotten a new perspective from Kenyans? I know we say a lot of things, a lot of great things. So have you got any new perspective?
Well, it depends where in Kenya you are, particularly in Nairobi.
Uh-huh.
Nairobi is like Kampala, so like it's not like I'm just living in a matrix. Honestly speaking, just that in this particular matrix, I couldn't understand the language. That was the only difference. I think, but for when I moved to the refugee camp, particularly, I think that was rather interesting because Kakuma, particularly, there's so many Swahili speakers from like all over Africa. So they have the Congolese, the South Sudanese, the Somali people, and you have all these people from all these different places, but they speak one common language. And then when you reach to engage with the communities themselves, you realize that even the distinct communities have different approaches and different characters within them. And then how you approach those people will be often different.
Mm.
So it's also like I can't I love the Kenyans Nairobi. They kept bullying me for not knowing how to speak Swahili, but that's okay. Fair. Experienced the same thing in Kakuma. Been here 2 days, same thing. But I guess people are just being people, and I think everyone is just hustling, should I say? And I think that's the biggest issue because when they look at me, they see money. They think I have money to offer. And I think that has been very very challenging, especially people who are bringing skills and knowledge. Because the project we're doing is skilling women to sew reusable sanitary pads, right? But even after the lessons, even after you provide all the materials, they're like, "So, is there something you guys have for us?" I'm like, guys, we can. This was the thing. This was the thing.
This was it. This is
Yeah.
better, guys.
But like trying to explain that to people who do not come from as much privilege as you have is very difficult because then you understand why they're asking for that money, right? But at the same time, it's not in your capacity to give that money to them. Um, it's been challenging to navigate dealing with
Mm-hmm.
people who have different struggles from yours. I guess that has been a very interesting experience for me.
All right, all right. Okay, I have. You worked in AWACN. You spoke in the commemoration of Youth Day, and I'm wondering because I feel like you work a lot with like women empowerment. Your project right now, I saw your Instagram reel on like how you're making like the sustainable sanitary towels for women, and like how you've had to find the quality material. So how do you maintain that? Just how do you maintain that energy of like working and like empowering people? You know.
Well, I think it's a constant itch of
Mm.
I'm not doing enough. I don't know, like I think I'm constantly on the move, constantly doing things, and when I reach to relax and sit down for like a good week, I feel like I'm wasting time, which I'm not wasting because I'm actually need to rest. But I think being constantly on the move and trying to do something constantly new or trying to actively do things outside myself gives me so much life because I've been running on like 4 hours of sleep for the past couple of days, but I'm barely tired. But which is quite odd because then at school I could have a solid 10 hours and still be unmotivated. Like I don't care the whole day and I'm so unfulfilled. But like when I'm out here with the world, I feel so full. And I guess I yearn to feel full. I yearn to feel a fullness within me. And like when I do this work, I feel full. Women empowerment, I don't know, it's just because I'm a girl and all these projects just seem to fit within my metrics of being a girl. But like I want to branch out more. I do already branch out because in fact when I do my social media commentary on TikTok, it's mostly men who engage with that. I don't know why women don't like politics, but it's mostly men who engage. I think my biggest fan base on my TikTok is male. I think over 80% of it. But I don't know when you shift to like Instagram where I do much lighter stuff. That's where the girlies come in. But like in respect to women empowerment, I believe the girl child is full of so much potential, can do so much more. But the more I engage with these communities at grassroots level, I realize that some of us are 100 light years ahead of other people. And I think having seen how important education is in to get access in general, I just want other people to actually have the bare minimum of that, to have at least the education to give them that access. It could be any other factor, but at least have the education.
Okay, Janice. The last question I usually ask is, what should you do if given the opportunity? Of course, you can do a lot of things right now, but what is your utopian vision of quality education? First of all, what should you do to change or improve in the education system?
God. I would definitely cut the long hour. I don't understand why someone needs to sit in a classroom for more than half an hour.
That's 30 minutes.
40, like half an hour, 40 minutes, that's enough. I don't understand why you do 2 hours. I don't understand why you do 1.5 hours. I don't understand why you do what 5, because my lectures are so long, they go up to 3 hours, and that's the most draining thing I've ever had to experience.
Oh, you have 3 hour long lectures.
Yes, exactly. So that's definitely the first thing I do. I would definitely change. Cut time, like after half an hour, no, end story. But like, I think also like on a very much more complex. I think in my particular context, I don't know. School should be fun. I think the best part about school for me was never the learning. It was mostly the memories I made with my friends and the people who, some of the teachers who really made school light. So my utopian vision of education is that it stops feeling like a burden. And I know burden, the word burden is also could sound very, very privileged, given the fact that I'm calling it a burden, yet someone else would want to have the education I have, right? But a burden in two ways. A burden in that, one, if you don't have an education, then that becomes a huge problem because you can't do anything sustainable with your life, at least competitively. So first of all, it's a burden because if you can't have it, then you are technically done for. And when you do have it, it becomes a burden in the extent that the learning structure in itself does not incentivize you to branch out, to be competitive, to dare to do hard things. It rather tries to conform you within a particular structure, a particular line.
Yep.
So that makes it very, very difficult for someone to fully discover themselves and what they want to do with life. So my utopian vision for education is essentially for school to be fun. At least for the greater half. The 10% could be exam stress, but at least for the greater half, let it be fun.
Yeah, true. I feel like that starts with the libraries. Like, I feel like libraries should like libraries should be the most aesthetically pleasing places like for someone to go in. Yeah. If I want to go to a library, it should be beautiful. Like we should start with libraries and the infrastructure. Like, just make school beautiful, and that will incentivize people to like go to school. Yeah, so thank you so much, Janice, for being here. I appreciate the work that you do. Keep on shining and keep on being the best version of yourself and inspiring people to be the best versions of themselves.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me.